Why white sage is a closed practice.
She's right, you know. For those of you who want a quick, short answer, yeah, it's a closed practice. For those of you who want a long, drawn-out explanation, got you. So first off, it's important to note that when it comes to spiritual or cultural practices of any people, they don't owe you an explanation at all. Quite simply, if something belongs to a certain group of people, just leave it the fuck alone if they want you to leave it alone. But being the person that I am, I really felt that it was necessary to address this because it's probably one of the most common questions I get asked, and I do get asked in a very respectful way. So I figured I would make a video to kind of address it once and for all. So here we go. In order to understand why sage is a closed practice, we kind of have to go back in time a little bit to give you a little bit of context as to why it is the way that it is. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this is why this event that I'm about to talk about has been so traumatic for Indigenous people and has really shaped who we are in the modern age. I'm talking about the 1978 American Indian Freedom of Religion Act. For those of you who don't know, prior to the American Indian Freedom Act, any type of spiritual practice, indigenous spiritual practice or ritual was outlawed by the U.S. government. Not just banned, but I mean, it was a federal offense, meaning that if you were caught practicing indigenous culture or spirituality, that it would land you in the federal penitentiary. And as a result, a lot of people who continued to practice and ensure that these ways were available for the future generations had to practice it in the shadows. They had to practice it guerrilla style. And those who were caught lost their freedoms and in a lot of cases lost their lives. And I know it kind of goes against that whole, freedom of religion thing everyone likes to talk about. The Declaration of Independence also refers to indigenous peoples as those merciless Indian savages. So safe to say it didn't really apply to us. And remember, this was in 1978. So to give you some context, that was 11 years before I was born. It happened in your parents' lifetime. And it's literally the definition of, religious or spiritual persecution. And those practices included burning white sage. Now, for anyone who's ever been in a indigenous community, they will tell you that a lot of our ceremonies or practices are ones that we do not record, whether it be on videotape or a camera or on a lot of times even audio tapes. Now, indigenous knowledge and teachings are oral traditions, meaning they're passed down by voice and story rather than documentation and words. This is a belief in the fact that the language itself has an identity, and we lose that identity when we put it on paper, or in this case on tape or audio recording. This is a widely accepted belief pretty much across the board. But indigenous people, we didn't have those devices a long time ago, so how can it be a traditional belief, right? 1978 American Indian Freedom of Religion Act. Recording these things would result in us going to prison, losing our freedoms and losing our lives. If you don't record it, you can't prove it happened. But what that did was really stop our traditions from becoming commercialized because they were kind of held in secret. And a benefit to that was the fact that it prevented the exploitation of our herbal medicines, including white sage. We don't believe in selling things, whether it be eagle feathers or any type of these medicines. We don't commercialize them. And again, there's a historical reason why, but now the general cultural belief is that it takes away from the real teaching that comes with those things. And we saw it with eagle feathers, in which case the eagle almost went extinct. We saw it with the buffalo almost went extinct. Bad things happen when you commercialize something. You get exploited. And as a result of a lot of people from the witch and spiritualist community especially, white sage is becoming commercialized because they somehow identify it with pagan beliefs. And it's not. There is a plant that's referred to as sage that comes from a lot of North beliefs, but it's not white sage. It's not the same. But they substituted it in, and people who don't know the language barrier are continuing to use it in that sense. And as a result, it's becoming increasingly a worry with tribal nations, especially in the California area, of the sustainability of this plant, meaning it's being over-harvested to put in crystal shops and spiritual shops around the country. And this is what happens when you don't know the history, you don't know the practice of which you're doing, and what happens when you make something trendy that belongs to a specific culture. And that's the most that I can explain it without crossing any type of my own cultural lines. And I hope that helps. So, yeah, it's a close practice.